What advice would you give to a person that is facing a backlash or criticism when they take a stand on an issue? If they came to you, if
Sure.
Dak Prescott ran into you and was like, yo, Mark, I want to do this and I want to keep doing it, but man, I'm getting killed out there. What would you say to Dak?
Look, Dak, first things first is that we really want to work on your footwork when you're doing your 5 and 7 foot step drops. Is we really want to make sure that you got your footwork.
Is there anything better than a trip getting ready? Nope. For a long journey where our podcast released a new epi, searching for a faith fiend, a new fixation. Giving this a subscribe is the same sensation. Started with the day ones, they gave us fuel to support the season. Could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here for a reason. Notification bells, tap some friends, all to let you know. Check your Bluetooth, connect, talking with Delato.
Welcome in, everyone. Today's episode, you said it, we were all thinking it. With our guest, Marc Istook, season 2, episode 92. Wow. Marc, just want to say thank you for coming on. Pretty excited about today.
Well, thank you for having me. This is an honor to get a chance to chat with you.
So you had a viral moment. Some people may not know you. I'm going to give them a little bit of an introduction. Marc Istook is a 7-time Emmy-winning journalist and the morning anchor for WFAA's Daybreak in Dallas, with over 25 years of experience in news, sports, and entertainment. His career has taken from the NFL Network to CNN, the BBC, and red carpets at the Oscars, Emmys, and Grammys. In this episode, we dive into his journey, the evolving media landscape, and the viral moment that put him at the center of an important conversation. Marc, this is going to be fun for me.
Well, me too.
Marc, can you walk us through the moment you decided to respond to that cable news broadcast with the host taking issue with the Kendrick Lamar Super Bowl halftime show? What was going through your mind?
Sure. Well, I had seen that critique, if you want to call it that, kind of making the rounds on social media a little bit. And I thought, this feels kind of ripe for a rebuttal. And it takes some time to put some of those rebuttals together. And then there's also the question of, gosh, do I really want to weigh in on some social media argument and the allure of posting something on social media and then someone claps back and you end up mucking around in the mud.
Yes.
It's really easy to get caught up in that kind of vicious cycle. And at the end of the day, you haven't moved a needle and all you've done is argue with people online. Yes. I don't have any interest in that. I've done that before. I've gotten sucked into that trap before. And I really debated if a response is something I wanted to do. But it just kind of stayed on my mind for a few days. And I thought, man, this wasn't a critique of the Super Bowl halftime show. This to me felt like a blatant dog whistle. The things that news anchor, the things he was calling out, the way he was phrasing everything, it just felt like a tired, rehashed, recitation of some of the old racist tropes that we have heard ad nauseum for decades.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know what, let me just kind of put something together. And I want to do it in a way where I'm not calling anybody names. I'm not calling him a name.
Yes.
I'm just addressing the points that he made in his broadcast. And so decided to put something together. And I thought, I have a feeling this might generate a little bit of attention, but I didn't expect it to generate the kind of attention that it did, and was overwhelmed and blown away by the response, was humbled by the response, and the fact that 99.9% of the commenters seemed to be positive. That was especially humbling. So I just felt like it was a chance to kind of call out what felt to me to be a pretty obviously, again, without calling the broadcaster a name,
yes.
I thought that the critiques to me felt very simply racist.
What kind of feedback did you receive after that moment? And did that change any perspectives for you?
Again, I was just really blown away with how positive the response was. I expected a lot more criticism to kind of come out of the woodwork. So I worked at the NFL Network back when Colin Kaepernick made the news for his kneeling stance.
Yeah,
and we had a show. There you go. we had a show that was on Twitter at the time, and every day we'd put out like a blast, like, "Hey, NFL live," or whatever we call the show, is about to go, 3, 2, 1, and we would just get barraged with anti-Colin Kaepernick tweets. So I'm used to the talking points from the trolls who want to come out and rehash tired stereotypes. I've been around the block with that stuff before. So I was kind of prepared for that. I expected that. I did not expect the positive response, and I did not expect as many people in the Black community to share, again, the feedback that they did. And that was just really humbling and meaningful to be part of a conversation that I had never intended to be part of at the level that apparently I was. Was again just really humbling and moving, frankly.
Let's get to in your experience, how do mainstream news organizations handle conversations around race and bias? Do you think that there's been progress aside from this moment?
I do think that there has been progress, but I don't know. Is it progress on a linear scale, or is it progress on a treadmill where you're trying to keep up? You know, I would maybe argue that it feels like it's progress on the treadmill where, you're moving, but you're on the treadmill and it feels like you're not going anywhere. And, because I do think you are seeing some representation, some expansion of viewpoint. So I think you are seeing some of those things, but if you're playing catch up after, decades upon decades upon decades of a lack of those things, where are you on the continuum?
Yes.
I don't know the answer to that one.
As someone who's been in media for over 25 years, have you seen the industry's approach to race, diversity, and social responsibility evolve? When you came in, I know there might have been a couple moments where it was uncomfortable for you. And maybe now you're a person that's in the room. It's like, hey guys, maybe we could handle this differently. Do you see that evolve from when you came in to where you stand with it now?
I think so. I think that those conversations, they're being had more frequently. So that's a good thing, that we are more quick to ask ourselves, wait a second, what are we saying here?
Yeah.
Are we representing all of the voices in the communities that we cover, all the voices in our newsroom? Have we considered perspectives we wouldn't have already? And I definitely, as a white guy, am a product of all of the life experiences that I've had up till now, which have forced me out of my comfort zone and forced me to look at things from different perspectives, and hopefully have grown along with those. And I can look at ways I might have responded to something 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years ago and how I would respond now. And certainly know that I'm a work in progress, as I think we all are. I don't know any of us that aren't.
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
You've covered everything from Super Bowls to the Oscars to breaking news. How do you adapt to such different settings as a journalist?
Well, for one thing, as a journalist, I cover things that are interesting to me and have been fortunate to be able to do so over the course of my career. So I am somebody who loves the sports world and loves the NFL and college football. And I am somebody who loves the entertainment world, and I enjoy politics and I enjoy the stories that matter to our local viewers. So I feel like I've been really fortunate over the course of my career to cover a wide variety of topics that I find interesting as a viewer. So covering something that isn't, to me, if you can't find the hook, the angle, the reason why it's interesting to your audience, then maybe you're covering the wrong beat or covering the wrong story. Maybe you're not the ideal person to cover that particular topic. That's not to say that you can't learn more about that topic and that you can't find the nugget, but hopefully you can figure out why it matters and get interested yourself.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite or most memorable interview?
That's a good one. Let me think about that for a second.
Mm-hmm.
When I covered entertainment news, Tom Hanks was always a reliably fun interview, very present in the moment, always willing to have a give and take with you. I really enjoyed that. I had a podcast, which haven't done a new episode in a while, but Dream Job for your viewers and listeners that want to check it out, where I just talk to people who have interesting jobs. And that was fun for me because you're going for 45 minutes, an hour, however long, and it's a conversation. It's less of a Q&A. It's more of, you're talking to people about aspects of their jobs in life that make them interesting, that other people might find interesting, that are, key to their evolution as a person. So that one was a lot of fun. I got to talk to, former NFL stars and, folks that were Emmy winners and cookbook authors and an educator at the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute and, folks from a vast array of walks of life and endeavors. And to me, I loved it. I loved every second of that.
Yeah. With AI, social media, citizen journalism on the rise, what do you think is the biggest challenge for traditional broadcasters today?
I think keeping up with where the audience is and what they want to hear about, learn about, see. That's always been tricky. How do you balance the meat with the veggies when it comes to journalism? There are certain things that you need to cover that audiences aren't always as interested in. And maybe that's the extra challenge, is how do you tell that story about a topic that they might not care about? There are, probably a lot of people right now that don't care about tariffs, but there are some real reasons why you should care about them and you should at least know about them. And hopefully if we do our job right, we're telling the story in a way that has you kind of lean in and want to know more and makes you feel smarter when it's all said and done, and where you can form your own opinion about this topic. But juggling the meat and the veggies is always important, and not just broadcasting the story that gets clicks and eyeballs. Yeah. Just because. That sometimes, not always, sometimes that can be low-hanging fruit. And you're giving people what they will consume and not necessarily what they need. And that's tricky because at some point you're applying your judgment as a journalist, as a news organization, as a news director, whatever, to these stories. But you're trying to deliver people that well-rounded, plate of the stuff they want, the stuff they like, maybe the veggies they didn't like so much, but they need to eat their broccoli. And the hard part too is you've got to deliver it to them now in this day and age in a way they'll consume it. So that might be traditional linear television. It might be on their device. It might be on social media. It might be on a streaming show. There are so many different ways people are consuming it. The audience is more fragmented than ever, and I think more likely to retreat into their own kind of silos and echo chambers. And that makes the job a lot tougher than it used to be.
So what I just got from all that, Mark, is that you're volunteering today when the trade war starts and the market has plummeted, that you are going to make it make sense. You are going to be the man in the front, and you'll describe the macroeconomics, the microeconomics to the ground level so we all can understand what's about to happen.
Look, that's certainly my goal. I mean, I think what I've always tried to do is I am not the expert's expert. Yes. But I want to learn enough about something where I can synthesize it for the viewer sitting at home on their couch, or the guy or girl who's scrolling their social media feed, and take this topic and help digest it and put it in terms that the average viewer can understand, and ask the questions that the average viewer might have. It's amazing to me how easy it is and how often we in the news business just assume that people know things that we take for granted because we talk about it all the time.
Yes.
And that's not fair to our audience, and it does us a disservice if we're not able to kind of break those items down into digestible, easy to understand elements and make people smarter after our broadcast or our clip than they went in.
Yes. Well, that's a daunting task.
Yeah.
I served in the military, and one of the things that we always knew, our training, I was a trainer also, your training could never be above a 7th grade level. Because in all across America and the world, we have people from other countries that come and serve. We don't know where their school background left them, and you don't want to shoot above them. So you want to make sure that that was it. It was always 7th grade level. So I could see the challenges that you could have there.
First of all, thank you for your service. I think that now more than ever, hopefully, we're appreciating folks who decide to sign up for a cause that is greater than themselves, whatever that may be.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you've seen kind of firsthand the difficulty, and again, sometimes the dessert and the vegetables that you've got to serve folks to keep their attention.
Yes, sir. I have. Marc, how do you balance journalistic integrity with entertainment value, especially in morning news? I mean, you just said you've got to make sure people understand it, but you've got the job to do and you got to give it. And I know you got a news director that's like, hey, we're going to put this in. And I know it's a challenge. So I'd like to know, like, where do you come from when you're thinking of it? Do you say, I want to be memorable, or I want to be quick? I don't understand how you make those decisions with your job. And
sure. Yeah, that's a great question. I think the goal, a word I want to strive for, is engaging. So that, to me, when I hear the word engaging, it means that we are, it's a back and forth. It's not just me up here saying things and you see them or you don't, or your eyes kind of glass over, or you kind of zone out, you're not paying attention anymore. I want to feel like, you're kind of locked in with the viewers, whoever you're talking to, but really that one person who's on the other side of it, that you guys are kind of here. And ideally, when you're engaged, that means when you are talking about that serious topic, and you are connecting with the questions they have, the things they want to know about it, the information they're bringing to the table ahead of time. When you're connected there, you are matching that level of energy, that level of interest, and that tone. So if we're doing a story on the Oscars, and there's news from the Oscars, this is not life and death. This is not brain surgery. Yeah. It's the Oscars. It's supposed to be entertainment. Let's have some fun when we talk about these movies, and we talk about, what people were wearing, or what acceptance speeches were exciting or not exciting in movies, and all that kind of stuff. And then when we're breaking down the situation at the border, that's really serious stuff for a lot of people, and people have really strong opinions across the political spectrum. So let's take this very seriously and let the viewers know that we take it seriously as well, because that's what that topic demands and what the viewers should expect on the other side of it.
Oh, okay. I get that. Morning TV has a unique energy. I do a morning talk show from 7:30 to 10 here in Austin. What's your routine like to stay sharp and engaging so early in the day? Marc, I'll tell you, 28 years in the military. I'm retired, but I wasn't a coffee drinker. And people looked at me like I was an alien because we have the early mornings, and Donato's not a coffee drinker. So we want to know, how do you stay sharp and engaging so early?
Well, I am a coffee drinker.
Okay.
Although that, I don't know if that's a placebo or not. It's just part of the routine. It's this nice little thing that I do each morning that makes me feel like I'm at the start of my day, and I'm locked in. I've got my cup of coffee. So, it's part of the routine. I don't know, I feel like I notice it when I miss it, or miss it when I haven't had it. But you would know, being on mornings, that routine is the key.
Yes.
Getting on this shift, I get up at 2 a.m. I'm out the door at 2:30. I'm in the office at 3. We're on the air at 5 to 7. So that routine, getting your body to acclimate to that, getting your body to adjust to that is key, or else you won't be awake. And I remember when I started, there were many mornings where I was just in that mental fog because I hadn't quite adjusted to that. And the realization that made me aware of how important that routine was. Airline pilots cannot fly if they have been on the clock for a certain number of hours. They should have a certain amount of sleep before they fly an airplane. Now, we're not flying airplanes, but the reason why those pilots have those requirements is so they are mentally sharp. That acuity is there.
Yes.
And I know when I was adjusting to the schedule at the beginning that there were times I would see words on a teleprompter. It's in a haze. So doing this for going on 6 years has allowed me to acclimate to where now when I'm not on this shift, I'm still, I could get up at 2 and go. And I'm not a morning person, but your body gets in that rhythm.
Yes. So Marc, what we want to know, when do you bed it down? I'm going to guess 9 o'clock. You tell yourself at 9, you got to be in the sack. What's the real number?
To me, 9's on the good side. Now you can do the math. If you get up at 2 o'clock and you go to bed at 9, you're getting 5 hours of sleep, which is not what they recommend. And you can nap for 2 hours in the daytime, and that 2 plus 5 doesn't really equal 7 hours of sleep if you learn about sleep rhythms. So I really should be going to bed at 6. But we've got 3 kids and a life, so that never happens. But that's the ideal. And I definitely try to make up for it on the weekends. But it is it's a lifestyle change for sure to be able to get up this early and to work these hours.
I've got 3 kids myself, Mark, and
you know.
I don't know. Oh yeah, I don't know anyone that could be in the bed before 9 with kids. I struggled, Mark. What is the bedtime for them? And so we settled on 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock, they got to be in the bed. In the bed is what we're calling it. I don't know if I got it right. I don't remember what mine was as a kid. How did you make that decision, Mark?
Well, if 7 would be great. That'd be awesome.
Oh, yes, it would.
That's not happening. But I mean, if we can start moving in that direction, that'd be great. I think for us, it's a little bit of you're doing the math on the hours. All right, well, if they're heading that way at 7:30 and they're really falling asleep at like 8:30, okay, they're getting up at, let's say 6:30 or 7 the next day. Okay, what does that equal to, and what do their bodies need, and how does each kid respond to that amount of sleep, et cetera? And also, what do mom and dad want, and how do we claw back the time that we need in the evenings to be able to be whole, emotionally healthy adults?
Yes. Mark, I need some help. I think you're in a chair. Is there a couch anywhere near you? I'm going to need to lay out on the couch. I feel like I'm so comfortable. I want to ask you something here.
All right.
Mark, I don't read to my kids every night. Before I had that first kid, I knew every night I was going to read to them. I speak a couple languages, and I was going to read to them. I've got on their book stand a bunch of books in those languages, and I think I'm going to read it to them. Mark, I can't tell you the last time I read a book, especially with 3 kids. Like, how do you do that? You read in one room, then you run to the other one and read to another. Mark?
Yeah, that's tricky. I mean, with my schedule, trying to get to bed, my wife handles that a lot. And that there's definitely an imbalance there in terms of the number of nights that she's doing it versus I do it. But we're at an age too where our 2 oldest, they will read to themselves. But our youngest is pretty regular every night. And we would do nightly for quite a while. And I think the greatest gift any parent can give their kids is the love of reading, because once they love reading, then the world can be their oyster. They can learn anything they want to learn. They can go on adventures they never would have thought possible. They can pick up a couple of languages. They can travel to any part of the world. I mean, what reading does for kids, I don't have to tell the educators out there just, what the research says about it. But the fact that you did it at all already puts you ahead of a lot of folks who just for whatever reason, one reason or another, aren't able to do so.
Okay, see, you did it there. Now I feel a little bit better because I've fallen off here recently. I don't know what's going on in our lives. Well, sports just started back up. We had a little bit of the winter break, and we're in the first couple weeks of softball and soccer. So we're getting home, and it's rough. Let's talk a little sports and entertainment. So you spent years at the NFL Network. What's one behind-the-scenes story about covering the league that fans might not know? You might even be embarrassed about it. Like you took the last donut. Marshall Falk wanted it, but you took it.
Let's see. I will say that I'm a big college football fan. And when I started working at the league, my college football relative to the NFL was kind of like this. And the time I spent there, I really gained I reignited my love for the league and for pro football. Big Cowboys fan, but I had worked as a local sports anchor for many years before I moved to Los Angeles and covered a variety of other topics. And it just had gotten, when it's your job, sometimes it loses its luster. But working for the league and getting to learn about the game from some of the brightest minds ever to do it, guys who are Hall of Famers, and great broadcasters was, man, I thank my lucky stars for that opportunity. It really, really was a pretty special time and just a great experience as a broadcaster. And I know that 18-year-old me would have never dreamed of some of the stuff I got to do. So the secret behind the scenes thing, let me think about that. I think you get to know an appreciation for the game and what it means to people. And football has undergone a lot of, hand wringing about the violent nature of the sport, about the impact of CTE on people who play it. And rightfully so. I think those are absolutely things we should be aware of and conversations we should be having. But for me, it was a reminder of what the experience can mean for people, and not just those who play it, for those who are around the game and love the game. And I think it's when it works, it can be the best of what sports can be and what it teaches us about discipline, about sportsmanship, about being a member of a team, about hard work, bouncing back, resiliency, all that kind of stuff. Obviously, that's the ideal that we don't always reach all the time in sports, whether they're pro or not. But getting a chance to be part of a team, talking about a team sport, that was pretty cool.
Mark, what's your take? We have a lot of athletes that are becoming coaches. Of course, we know Coach Prime and how devices, that's a whole nother episode I'd have to talk to you about why people are struggling with him so much. But remember Deshaun Jackson played for the Eagles, the Redskins. He's now the head coach at Delaware State in HBCU. And, he's bringing on some talent, just brought on Marshall Faulk. What's your take on players maybe not doing the traditional route, coming up through the ranks? They spent 20 years here and 20 years there and then getting the job. What's your take on that? On my sports show, I'm the only one that believes they should just walk in, especially if you're an NFL Hall of Famer. You could just walk in and get started if you're offered the job. What's your take, Mark?
Yeah, I think that depends upon the person. Obviously, you've got some guys who have been students of the game, who've been, kind of coaches on the field for much of their career, and some guys who haven't. But I think by and large, that experience has to count for something as a player, that you got a unique insight into what works to motivate your teammates, what doesn't work. Playing the game obviously is not the end all be all of experience, but it's a pretty valuable one. Yes. And I for one, so you brought up Deion Sanders. I'll share with you a conversation I had with him a number of years ago, before coaching was even on his radar. This was back, I want to say 2014, maybe 2015, before the start of the season. Kickoff event in Seattle. Green Bay and Seattle are about to start the year on a Thursday night, and we had a big event up there, and he and I just happened to be hanging out in the green room talking about football. And if I remember correctly, SMU had an opening at the time, and he felt like they should hire a coach of color. Yeah. And he thought that the players they were trying to recruit, the area that SMU was located, it would really they'd be able to have a competitive advantage by having a coach who could speak to the kids they wanted to recruit in a way that, frankly, would be a struggle for a lot of white coaches. And I think what he said that day turned out to be pretty prescient when you look at his experience at Jackson State and then at Colorado, that he has been able to connect with recruits in ways that other coaches traditionally have not. And part of that's because of who he is as a person. Part of it's because of the work he's done in the community. And you're right, Deion is a polarizing figure, but I think it does him a disservice to not acknowledge what he's done for the players that he has served and coached, and what he has done to draw attention to HBCUs, and what he's done, on the football field. Look, is it traditional? Is it ultimately going to be successful? That's a whole different conversation. Yeah. I think he's created a paradigm shift in, the modern athlete especially, and how you reach and connect with some of those guys.
Michael Vick's on his way to Norfolk State. That's a small HBCU down in Virginia, and he's from Virginia. We call that area the Seven Cities. So that's Norfolk, Virginia Beach, Newport News. So Allen Iverson's from that area. with everything that he went through, Mark, I think if there's any young man that wants to look up to someone that's had a struggle and matriculated through it, had a second chance, did something with it, that's why I'm sending my kid to Michael Vick, because Michael Vick has a great story, made a mistake, didn't come, he took his lumps and he came out and he wasn't pointing fingers. I don't believe he was just saying, he said, yep, okay, this is where I'm at. And I think that's one thing that's going to help him at that school. So what do you think about when let's just say right now, you have a kid, 5A, 5-star talent, they're looking at a school to go to. What are you looking for in a coach, Mark?
Well, that's easy to say, being in that situation, because I can think of the most random ideals that I want to elevate as opposed to having to deal with brass tacks. But I think, one, it's really easy to want to make sure your kid goes to a place where they can maximize their future earning potential, their chance to play in the NFL if they are that caliber player. I happen to think that you're putting not all your eggs in one basket, but that even with a 5-star player, the odds of your kid going pro are slim.
Yes.
So I want my kid to go someplace where they are going to learn life skills and life lessons and be able to apply those in whatever endeavor they pursue. Maybe it's football, maybe it's not. Odds are that it wouldn't be. So I would want to choose a coach and a program where I felt like there was a high likelihood of that. Now, is Michael Vick the coach for that? Haven't met him. Can't speak to that he would be, other than I do think what we saw from him and how he handled the dogfighting charges and the time he served for that, it seemed like this is a guy who genuinely wanted to make amends and genuinely came out of it a changed person. And look, if we can't learn from our mistakes and find redemption, if we can't believe that that's possible for people, not just as somebody who calls himself a Christian, but as somebody who believes in hope and second chances, I don't want to view the world through that lens that doesn't allow people those opportunities. I know that there are still some in the animal community that have a lot of issue with Michael Vick, and I think that's understandable completely. But I would hope that by and large, we allow people the opportunity to pay their penance and serve the community at large. And it looks like that is what he has done and is trying to continue doing.
Yeah. Yeah. If we ever get the chance to talk again, I would love to give you some life perspective I have on that and a couple of places I've lived, because you said you're a man of your experiences. Remember when we started, you said that. I lived in Atlanta for a while, and we did a lot of traveling on that Georgia red clay, some dirt roads my mom should have never driven down. But I remember I used to see a bunch of pickup trucks with dog crates in the back, just like you have for hunting dogs. You put your hunting dogs in there. And I saw signs that said dog fights and then an arrow. That I was born in 75. So, that's a kid growing up in the 80s. And my parents are from New York. So I used to go to New York. They think that if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. So they sent me there for the summers. St. Mary Mathis Park. I went to that park and I saw a crowd. And I was like, what's going on over there? I walk over to the crowd and there's dogs fighting, pit bulls. And people are standing all around. And one of the things I looked at, Mark, there was a cop standing right there. And he wasn't breaking it up. He wasn't shooing anyone away. And again, that's the 80s. So everyone is going to have different experiences. I'm just going to say there's a lot of atrocities. I think he was the face. I think he was a person that just had to take the fall. But I have the perspective to know it's a little more commonplace than most people would know. So with that, when I offer that to you, Mark, because you were with me in Atlanta, you weren't in the Bronx, New York with me. What happens when you genuinely, he said, I guess I can't really say I knew it to be wrong. It's just I'm a product of that environment. I saw it. What happens when some of our athletes come from different places, all different types of backgrounds, and now they have means, and sometimes they make these mistakes? There's almost no way to fix that. But what say you, Mark, when it comes to the second chances? Because a lot of times we just want to get the person and we want to make them pay.
Yeah. And he's an example of that. And again, I absolutely understand why a lot of people felt like what he did was abhorrent. I get it. I totally do. And I think it's safe to say it was.
Yeah. Yes, it was.
Now, but I think there are many things in society that we do and have done over the years that were normalized for the people at that place in time. And this is definitely for me a, kind of log and speck in the eye situation where I think you've got to be careful with the absolutism when we haven't considered the circumstance and we can't allow a pathway to redemption.
Yes.
And, you look at cultural norms and cultural differences. We look at other cultural norms around the world or, even among different groups here in our own country, and people will turn their nose at them or find them, unpalatable. And other people would look at us and do the same. I think the idea, hopefully, is that we're all constantly progressing forward to a better understanding, a more whole view of creation and each other and right and wrong and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. But that's where I feel like for a guy like Michael Vick, there's got to be some pathway that says, okay, you thought this was normal. Maybe people can't wrap their head around that, but we're going to allow a pathway to, again, redemption, like I kind of mentioned before. And putting the dogfighting aside, I think there are countless examples of cultural behaviors that one group makes normative and other groups don't, and we argue about them and judge them without an understanding of where they may have come from and why they may have arrived where they were.
So that brings us right back to kind of what we started with, and what made you go viral is trying to understand people. I had a couple coworkers the next day after the Super Bowl. I heard them in the hallway. They look like you, don't look like me. They were talking to each other. My door was open. They were standing in front of my door, and their language, and they're nice, Mark. I mean, they haven't been over to my house. I can't say I've invited them, and they certainly have invited me to theirs. But it was just like that news broadcast. It was every bit of complaints. And I just, what brings me back is the Super Bowl halftime show supposed to be for everyone? And I know, how do we not know that it's not for everyone? If you bring Elton John on, there's going to be hip hop people that are going to be like, oh man, I wanted someone hip hop. If you bring Taylor on, there's going to be someone who loved that she used to do country and she's more pop now, who wants, let's go get a more authentic country star. I had to deal with that. And I stayed in my office. I let them have their conversation. I wasn't a part of it. But I just want to know, Mark, for you, what do you think about the intersection of sports and social issues today? Should athletes use their platform for activism towards helping us, the laymen, the fans, the viewers?
Well, real quickly, I want to address what you just said, that idea of a Super Bowl halftime show being for all America. I think that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
I think that's an impossible goal, right? Now, if you want to make one that all of America can enjoy, okay. But I think, again, that's kind of coded language for me.
Yes.
And the established majority, or whatever we perceive the established majority to be. Well, I like Taylor Swift. Everybody does. That's for everybody. That that we're ignoring, a lot of folks and their perspectives and their tastes when we kind of make that our North Star. So I think that's you're what's it when you try to please everybody, you're not going to please anybody. I mean, that's that kind of thing. But this one, it's not even really everybody. It's just your perception of everybody, which again is maybe a fool's errand. But to your second question on athletes and social issues, I don't think you can separate the two. I don't think that when it comes to Lewis Hamilton racing in Formula One, Jackie Robinson playing for the Dodgers, that you can separate the obstacles they had to face to get where they got. And those are social issues. It's real easy in hindsight to look at Jackie Robinson and be like, man, good for him. Let's have Jackie Robinson Day and let's retire his number. But not be willing to do that for the Jackie Robinsons of today.
Yeah.
And to tell them to shut up and dribble. And it definitely seems like it's really okay for certain forms of expression that are outside sports to be allowed at our sporting events, but not others. You look back at the raised fists at the Mexico Olympics in whatever it was, 1968.
68.
And like our Jesse Owens, and his kind of silent protest of the Berlin Olympics. I think it's real easy with the benefit of hindsight to say, good on them for standing up for an injustice. When that happens today, we shoot the messenger.
Yes,
so I don't know how you divorce the two, and I don't know how you believe in the idea of freedom of speech and the marketplace of ideas if people are not allowed to sell those ideas in the largest marketplace.
Yeah.
So
you've covered so many big events. What's been the most surreal or unexpected moment?
Man, I think covering the Oscars was pretty cool. Getting to do that, and as a guy who grew up a big movie fan and being able to be there and see the red carpet and all that kind of stuff, really awesome. And getting to cover Super Bowls, there is just an electricity that is in the air at a Super Bowl that it is hard to articulate just how awe-inspiring it is. It's just in the air. And to me, a Super Bowl used to feel like this unattainable, expensive event that it seemed like it was more trouble than it's worth. Getting to cover one for the NFL and be there on their dime with their access, I mean, man, that spoils you.
Yes, I can see that.
That spoils you, So that's both of those are pretty big pinch me moments that the significance is not lost on me, nor on the 18-year-old version of me.
I made the joke that I'm going to lay on your couch there and get that parental advice.
Yeah.
But I wanted to speak on advice and personal growth. There are aspiring journalists and broadcasters. What's the best piece of advice you can give?
Stick to it. Stick to it. The people who have achieved success that I've been around, by and large, are people who did not quit. And in my own experience too, I remember, climbing the ladder a little bit and having to start over and climb the ladder again and thinking, how long am I going to have to do this? Mm-hmm. And the light bulb kind of turning on when I thought about quitting. Well, what else am I going to do? This is what I want to do. If I quit, I'm just going to try to do this someplace else. Let's just, keep the nose to the grindstone. And I think stick-to-itiveness, for me, far and away, is the number one trait of people who I've been around that have been successful. I would think that's 1A, and 1B, I guess, too, would be somebody who evolves, not just changes with the whims, but that grows over time. Yes. If you're the same person now that you were 10 or 20 years ago, what have you been doing?
But I had a bitchin' Camaro. And it still runs.
Should have seen me in high school, man. I
still fit my starter jacket.
I would say those things, and the ability to continue to. It's weird because when you grow, you want to do two things. You want to sometimes, solidify your core beliefs and perspectives, and also allow yourself to open your mind. So it seems like a paradox, but I think if you're able to do both of those things and know when to do them while sticking to it and working your tail off, then the sky's the limit.
Yeah. Looking back at your career, is there anything you wish you would have done differently then?
That's a good one, because the hard part is, had you done it differently, who knows how it would have turned out?
Yeah.
So it's not that I don't have regrets, things that I wish I'd done differently, or man, I really messed that up, or I wish I'd done this differently or that differently. It's not that I don't have regrets. It's more that any little thing along the path that I could have changed or would have changed, I might be someplace different than I am now. Maybe better or very possibly worse. So nothing jumps out at me.
What's next for you, Marc? Any personal and professional goals you're working towards?
I feel very fortunate to be in the position I am in, where I am at a station in a market that I grew up in this area, Dallas-Fort Worth, and call Fort Worth home, and have gotten to, I've checked way more boxes personally and professionally than I ever would have anticipated. And I feel like I'm still got a few years left in me. So who knows what boxes there are left to check. But I think it's to continue, hopefully, to grow, and I still get that, rush of serving the community and telling a good story and being able to, again, hopefully be part of meaningful news coverage as someone who believes in the power of journalism, where I hope that that's something I get to continue doing in ways where I'm still challenged and stimulated, and people still want to tune in and watch.
Have you ever felt pressure? Have you ever faced pressure, either internally or externally, not to speak out on certain issues? How do you navigate that?
Yeah, I would say so. And sometimes you've got to listen to those voices about, you've got to pick your battles.
Yeah.
And sometimes you've got to say, this is a hill worth dying on. So yeah, I definitely have. And that's on some level, there's a little bit of that you're signing up for. That you got to understand that your ability to tell stories and connect hinges upon the audience's ability to trust you, and that you're coming from a place of good faith, that you're not slanting things just because that's what you want or that's what you believe, but you really are assessing all sides as objectively as possible. And I think that's a North Star that you don't ever achieve true idealistic objectivity, but you're always striving to get there as well as you can. And that trust is equity, with the audience that's earned. So you got to pick and choose that, when you do speak out and when you don't. And sometimes maybe someone else is a trusted advisor to tell what, maybe maybe you don't expend that capital here because you need it someplace else more.
What advice would you give to a person that is facing a backlash or criticism when they take a stand on an issue? If they came to you, if Dak Prescott ran into you and was like, "Yo, Marc, I want to do this and I want to keep doing it, but man, I'm getting killed out there," what would you say to Dak?
Look, Dak, first things first is that we really want to work on your footwork when you're doing your 5 and 7 foot step drops. Is we really want to make sure that you got your footwork right and that you can deliver over the middle, right to CD Lamb for a touchdown. It would depend on the issue. Yeah, it would depend upon the issue. Are you, to use that metaphor from earlier, are you dying on a hill that is not, the juice isn't worth the squeeze?
Yeah.
Hey, man, this is compromising your ability to do some other things that are really important. And sometimes, us on the outside can see that that's plain as day, that that's what's happening. And other times you got to make that decision for yourself and know, okay, how important is this to me? And is the cost worth it? Or is there some aspect of this I'm not considering that I need to learn more about and educate myself more about? If I'm facing pressures, that might be why that, you are not taking other experiences into account. You're not empathetic with the perspective that you're sharing, pushing for, or whatever. I mean, there are so many different variations on this. It's kind of hard to know without a specific example, but it depends upon the situation.
So that was my lead up to the example. Anthony Edwards says he doesn't want to be the face of the NBA. So you and I were talking advice and personal growth. I say it's because he wants to be the party boy, with have all the fun, none of the consequences, none of the pressure of being the face. What do you say to someone that says that? Because I think we're just having the Charles Barkley event again, that I'm not your kid's role model.
Yeah.
So
what
do you think?
That's tough, man, because the thing with Barkley was, I'm not your kid's role model, but sometimes you don't get to choose. You don't get to choose whether you are or are not. Let's say you're an uncle, right? And you've got some nieces and nephews. You may not have chosen to have those nieces and nephews, but whether you like it or not, you're a role model to them.
Yes.
And so there is some responsibility there just by virtue of your position and the privilege that comes with being their uncle or their aunt or whatever situation you find yourself in.
Yes.
So that's tricky because I do think people need to be authentically themselves and to, own who they are and who they want to be and all that kind of stuff. But to ignore that privilege and that responsibility, I think ignores reality. So I get where Barkley was coming from. And I always think we should always be trying to grow, always challenge ourselves to, okay, keep what's next? How do I grow as a person, in my profession, whatever. So I think that's a missed opportunity there. And ultimately it is a privilege and a responsibility to play pro sports, to get paid to do it and all that comes with it. But that's got to be balanced by who you are as a person. Maybe there's a middle ground somewhere for a guy like Anthony Edwards or Charles Barkley back in the day.
Mark, this has been great. I've got one last question here. Okay, I have two last questions. Here's the first one. Was there anything that you wanted to talk about when you were coming on? You're like, hey, man, I'd love to cover this. And maybe I didn't get to. Maybe there's a cause or a platform. Were there any things that you wanted to get to that we may not have?
Oh, not off the top of my head. I will say one thing while I have the opportunity. And, obviously I'm biased as a local journalist, but I think that now more than ever, I don't want to say now more than ever. I think now we need people aware and engaged with what's going on in their communities, whether that is their neighborhood, their city, their state, or the nation, and to be informed and to approach that with empathy that we're considering, our brothers and sisters when we consume news and how things affect them for whatever political stripe you come from, that we can. I think that's our privilege and responsibility as Americans.
Yeah. And the last one, what's your dream interview? Someone you've never had the chance to sit down with. I just want to know, we all want to know, like, who's your person? Maybe it's Elton John. Maybe it's Ric Flair. Like, we want to know who's your person, Mark?
This is a tricky one because I have been very fortunate to have gotten to interview a lot of personal and professional heroes, sports heroes, et cetera, over the years. I've been really lucky in that regard.
Yeah.
I think anytime you can interview a president, that's obviously awesome from just when you think about the power of that chair and that office.
Yes.
But I've crossed paths with a couple before they became presidents. Didn't interview them, but not in any real substantive way. But so there's a sense of like the aura after the fact. Let's see. I mean, I can think of some that would have been awesome historically. Muhammad Ali would have been amazing to get a chance to talk to him and just have an understanding of what he's gone through. Now that we're talking this out, a current one for me would be Lewis Hamilton. I brought him up earlier.
Oh yeah.
I'm a big Lewis Hamilton fan. I've become a big F1 fan in recent years.
Yeah.
And I just have tremendous respect for who he is and what he's gone through and what he stands for and the way he represents himself on social media and what he tries to put out in the world and how I think he uses, certainly seems like he uses his platform to help others, shine a light on them and give them opportunities. I just have a lot of respect for that. And so he would be a dream interview for sure.
If I get him, we'll tag team.
Let me know.
Marc, this was so much fun. Thanks for your time. I think we all got a great insight into you, more than just your video. I mean, we see a little bit more, and that's what we wanted. So, Marc, thanks for talking with Donato. Your socials, would you like to offer?
Just at Marc Istook, pretty easy to find on most of them. So, Marc with a C.
Thanks again, Marc.
Hey, thanks for having me. This has been a real joy and pleasure. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Have a great day.
You as well.